I'm in my studio today and I wanted to give you guys an update on... Don't say guys, Jesus Christ. Hi, I'm Nick, owner of Nick Church Photography. I'm in my studio today and I wanted to give some information to brides and grooms who are considering replanning their wedding due to the coronavirus pandemic. I want to explain how we're supporting our clients through that horrible process and also my view on the government's latest advice to take weddings from 30 guests down to 15. So I've shot a number of weddings since the pandemic started. Admittedly, this was when there were 30 people rather than 15. But to be honest, in all the weddings I've shot, there were fewer than 10 people at the ceremony, 10 in the afternoon. And so for those couples, nothing would have changed with the latest restrictions. I do have a couple of couples getting married in the next month who were planning evening events with up to 30 people. And it's really disappointing for those couples that they can't now do that, especially when they've replanned it several times already in some cases. But a lot of couples are planning to go ahead. Now, what the good news is that I'm finding that these weddings are intimate, they're personal, they're more romantic because the focus is all about the union of the bride and groom. And that's what it's all about, right? That's the most important thing. So couples are going ahead anyway, in lots of cases, with these weddings, whatever the restrictions, and planning a bigger celebration down the line when their entire family and more friends can join them to celebrate with them. And I think that's a really good way of doing it. With the 15 restriction, one thing that's been quite vague, but we now have got confirmation on this, that does not include any suppliers. So that 15 people is purely your guests, your witnesses, but it doesn't include the photographer, videographer, registrars, venue staff, so which the 30 people did. So actually it's not quite halving the number of guests that can come. Small benefits, I know, but it's worth mentioning. Also, this restriction has been put in place. The government have said 6 months, up to 6 months. So we don't know that it's going to last 6 months. We know it might be a maximum of 6 months. I suspect it won't be, but I've been wrong about things like this before. So that's probably worth planning for, but I think it may be better than that. Many of our couples have postponed their wedding for this year and in some cases next year. And in some cases they've done that several times, and it must be a horrible thing to put such love and attention into a day to then keep having to move it and cancel it and let all the suppliers know. So the least we can do is to make that process as easy, as stress-free and as flexible as possible. And that's why I've created the Nick Church Photography Guarantee. So this COVID guarantee means that if your wedding needs to be postponed due to restrictions by the government or a venue, we'll simply lift that booking, put it into the new date, and that's it. No extra fees, no extra bother, and we can also guarantee you'll have a photographer on that date to give you the Nick Church photography experience that you're expecting. Some couples are finding that in planning a wedding around COVID restrictions, they're ending up with a smaller, shorter day than they initially planned. So if you booked a full day of photography, it may not quite fit what you now need. And we've got a number of ways of dealing with that, and we're working with clients to make sure they've got just what they need, and that if there's a party later in the year, then we can simply shoot that instead. And that's a really good way of, again, adapting our service to fit what you need. Okay, so what about couples that haven't yet booked wedding photography? If you're getting married in 2021, 2022 and 2023, I can see why you may be reluctant to secure photography and other suppliers when you haven't got absolute visibility of what coronavirus pandemic is going to do. So that makes perfect sense. I understand why that is. However, there's a real problem with just waiting, and that's that when you do get that visibility, those suppliers might not be available. And that's especially true of the suppliers in demand, like Nick Church Photography and others, where we're booked up a year, sometimes 2 years in advance. Okay, so if your wedding venue's booked and you've got a date set, then get those key suppliers on board. But you're right to be cautious, but just make sure those suppliers are the type of suppliers that are going to be able to adapt to coronavirus, they're going to be able to adapt to government restrictions, they're going to change things to fit your day, and you're going to get that level of service. So that's really important that the ones you choose are going to work with you throughout any changes. Okay, so to wrap up, yes, it's a nightmare at the moment. We're working really hard with our clients to deliver amazing photos, amazing wedding films, alongside restrictions that are changing every week. It's really difficult to manage. My final bit of advice to couples that are considering replanning is if you cannot change your view of what your wedding needs to be. If you still want that same size wedding, just plan it far into the future where you're guaranteed, or more likely guaranteed, that's going to happen. Okay. So that's a much easier, much less stressful thing to do. The other low stress thing to do is to plan it amid the restrictions and just accept whatever restrictions are in place. So if it's 6 people, it's 6 people. It's 15, it's 15. You're just going to get married, whatever. I think those two things lift a lot of weight. What it seems to be the most stressful thing is to plan it for a few months in advance and just see the date getting closer and closer with restrictions in place, and you're worrying that you're going to have to replan it again. That, I think, is route draining, and I would try and avoid that if you can, given what I've seen from my clients. And so that's my advice. Thank you for watching, and yeah, catch up with you soon.